Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Currency Recap. Joe with you here on a Thursday. It's the 12th of December. Let's jump into it. You guys know how this works. I'm going to talk about the meaningful news of the day. Let's take a look at the markets overall and what we can take from them technically. And if I've got some trades out there, which I do, I'll share them as always.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
Moving into the market analysis, folks. I'm seeing a little bit more of a move onto the risk-off currencies, the yen, the US dollar. Let's call it what it is, folks. The US dollar has been super strong. But it's interesting to see stuff coming off out of the Aussie and the New Zealand dollar. Let's just jump straight into it. So the US dollar moves higher today. It actually pushed it into some pretty good levels. We'll take a look at the charts. In light of the CPI that actually came in a little bit higher than expected, they were in line with expectations, but inflation is still kind of hanging out. The Fed expected this, and I don't know if it's just a reaction to the Fed being correct, but the dollar moved a little bit higher. So the interest rate cut that's going to happen, I think it's Wednesday, is pretty much 100% guaranteed. And for some reason, I think the markets like that, at least the equities did on the US side. Now, on the Aussie dollar, I saw a couple of good numbers come out, right? Employment and unemployment were actually better, showing a little bit more strength in the economy of Australia. However, the Aussie dollar itself kind of drifted lower. It had a little bit of a shot up, but then it rolled over. Onk talked about this yesterday, expecting some sort of a range bound, and he was 100% right. So let's take a look at that as well. So this is kind of where we finished. So the franc fell off. It rolled over pretty good, about down 0.65% off of a resistance level. A move in the yen and the US dollar to the upside, and then Aussie and New Zealand dollar up as well, but overall weaker in the longer term. We'll take a look at it. Great British Pound, a little bit of a pullback. There's a resistance level that we'll talk about, and then the CAD and the euro basically kind of flat. Let's move over to how we finished. So the S&P down about 0.5% today. A little bit of a pullback. We've got a lot of volatility in the markets, and I imagine this will probably carry into the year's end. But overall, they're definitely bullish. World index down a little more than the SPY. Crypto up a little bit, more of a consolidation. Gold down and oil down as well, even though they actually had pretty good moves to the upside yesterday. So we just got this push and pull going on. Let's take a look at the cryptos here. You guys know that these things are really crazy right now, but Bitcoin down, Bitcoin Cash down, but Ethereum and Litecoin a little higher. But you'll see very volatile, pushing into new highs. Corrective action is going to be aggressive, and moves higher are going to sustain that way. But they are still definitely that +2, +3 area, day to day. The volatility, folks, I could actually see the volatility score going from a +3 to a -3 on the cryptos. They're just very tough to trade, so just be leery of it. All right, so our market outlook, we have this nice high base going on. You can see in this chart there. I'm going to keep it as a +3. You could knock that down to a +2 if you're worried about, kind of that 20-day moving average flattening out. But overall, the motion of the ocean, folks, on the U.S. on the U.S. markets are definitely glass half full. Let's just take a look at the chart real quick, and then we'll move into the currencies. It's this base here that's got me a little bit more comfortable when it comes to bullish trades. And what we're looking for specifically when it comes to a pattern is not breaking below that level. Let's call it, what do you want to call that? The 6020. That's fine. 6020 is what I'm looking for. But when you have these moving averages this far apart and they're ascending, we've got nice higher lows. It's just a very nice, take a step, break out, retrace, take a step, break out, and consolidate or retrace. So I'm okay even with continued weakness over the next few days when it comes to the overall equity markets. They seem to be very comfortable going upwards. So let's take a look at some of the economic news. Now, where I'm seeing a little bit more bias, here is the US dollar. This came out, well, this is Wednesday, right? The CPI expected to be a little higher than previous when it comes to month or year to year. That's fine. Powell came out a week before that saying that he's a little bit worried about some sticky inflation. He's also saying that the jobs market's a little bit stronger than anticipated, but they're still in line with what they want to do. So this number came in exactly as expected. And so that rate cut is going to be almost guaranteed. Taking a look a little further down, you can see that the PPI and the unemployment claims kind of showed this, kind of the same thing, but we did get a higher tick up in unemployment claims, which means we're still in line. So that's kind of why I'm seeing the U.S. being so strong. And the U.S. dollar actually kind of outperforming. And it could just be based on its stability. Right? You're going to cut interest rates. You expect that the currency to go down, but the stability or the expectations of stability could increase its strength. On the other side of things, this is the Aussie. And check this out. 35.6 versus 26. So employment change was higher. Unemployment rate was lower. So the Aussie is showing a little bit more strength as far as their economy, which if you look at it on the glass half empty side, the chances of a rate cut actually have gone down. So what is it? Do you want the rate cut or do you want the economy to stay stable? Doesn't matter. I think that this risk on that we've seen over the last little bit is kind of moving out. I think the Aussie and the Kiwi were actually kind of moving down anyways. So I'm not sure if this is more of an economic thing versus just something that was already happening. Once again, folks, that's my 2 cents, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. So let's take a quick look at our currency analysis, and maybe I can take a look a little bit deeper on what I'm seeing. First off, let's just go straight to the Aussie. This is a 4-hour chart. This is our momentum indicator. And it's been pretty decent. I could see that it actually slid a little bit from flat. It's moving a little bit lower. I don't think it's anything to worry about. It's just more of a kind of a consolidation or corrective action. Let's take a look at it on the daily real quick. And if you look on the daily, it's basically kind of a pullback. So if it can sustain itself here on that moving average, we could actually see this kind of emerge and move higher. I'm kind of grouping this with the strength in the US dollar, right? Because we have our risk off currencies, and the yen and the US dollar are the two main. So we'll see if it's going to kind of just follow suit with what the US dollar, or have the US dollar kind of raise it as it continues to be stronger. So I didn't really change it too much. I bump it down to a -1 just because the velocity is showing a little bit of weakness. But if it can stabilize here, we've got a flat RSI, we've got a sloping down moving average, but we do have a flip in the SAR. So I just wanted to kind of leave it alone. Now let's take a look at the US dollar. This is something completely different. This is our velocity score. It pulled back a little bit here on the RSI and actually stayed above that 50. It's moved higher. We've got a SAR that flipped. We've got price action that has actually broken above a resistance level, folks. And this actually goes back to what we saw here the 26th of November. SAR's flipped. Momentum's moved. Moving average is higher. This is definitely a +3. How long does it last? Well, it just depends on what we want to pair it with. But if you take a look at this on the daily chart, the longer term on this is doing almost the exact same thing. This is kind of that perfect storm. So if you guys are taking a look at something you want to pair against something super strong, it's the US dollar. That's pretty much all I'm going to be looking at as far as currency pairing. So let's go to the franc. The franc actually had a pretty aggressive move to the downside. This was holding in there pretty good when it comes to velocity. So it actually broke some support levels here. You can see over the last few days, it rolled over here on the moving average. I'm going to keep that as a 0, but this RSI movement and the flip on the SARs as far as the end included, I should say, with the price action, I got to give it a -2. It looks like it's kind of falling apart. Could it bounce? Of course it could. It's a very volatile currency as of late. Let's go to the euro. The euro's kind of been consolidating. It's kind of been hanging in there, but it looks a little weaker than, I guess the pound, if you want to kind of correlate a couple of currencies. Let's take a look at the daily chart on this. And you can see it's more of a bear rally than it is something more substantial on the longer term. It's right at a resistance level. This RSI the moving average is flattening. The RSI is consolidating just above that 50 point. So I'm a little bit more ominous on this, but if we want to just play straight volatility, folks, which is what we do, it is definitely flipping the SAR. This moving average is flattening. The RSI is right at that area. So I just kind of put it at, I don't really know what to do with it. I'm just going to give it a -1, but I'm not going to be aggressively bearish on it. Here's the pound. The pound it's been a pretty difficult one because it's had such an aggressive move on the shorter term. And I really want to echo what Ankit said. He nailed this thing. So it looks amazing. It's super strong, but he took a look at it on the daily and you could see it was right up against the resistance he was talking about yesterday, folks. And guess what happened? It absolutely rolled over exactly as kind of anticipated. So sure, the RSI is a little high. It's rolling over, so it's a little negative. The SAR quite hasn't flipped yet on the daily, but you can see on the 4-hour that the momentum is actually petering out. There could be some support levels down around this level, the 1.642 area, right where my cursor is here. But this RSI is showing it's actually deflating. We're approaching that 50 mark. It flipped over on the SARs. I didn't really want to go too aggressively bearish on it because of this moving average that it had when it comes to momentum. So I gave it a -2, a -1, but it is technically rolling over. And keep in mind, folks, it's based on a pretty good resistance level on that daily chart that Ankit talked about yesterday. Continuing on down, let's take a look at the CAD. The CAD is kind of sideways. Let's take a look on the daily first. You can see that the CAD actually had a pretty good aggressive correction when it comes to the daily chart, and it looks like an oversold bounce or a bear rally. The RSI on the daily looks like it's having a hard time getting above that 50 mark, but we're here to talk about the velocity score, so let's get into it. Velocity is sideways on that RSI, not really going any higher. It's kind of consolidating. We saw that we saw that in the past, and it actually took a lower leg, or I should say a lower move to the downside. So a little bit of a move to the upside. RSI is still negative. It's consolidating. I didn't really know what to do with this. I don't really want to beat it down because it's at this level that we've seen over the last little bit. So I kept it as a 0. Moving over to the Aussie. There's a couple things that I really like about how we've been watching this over the last little bit, and including what we saw when it comes to their announcement. So Ankit was talking about this yesterday, that look, it looks like the Aussie is a little bit lower, but we could see it get into a range. And this is the range that we're talking about. Look at that, this little box here. Now, folks, these numbers were good. They were very strong economically, right? Higher employment, lower unemployment rate. So it's one of these things too where, was the Aussie really depending on an interest rate cut, which would actually weaken the currency? But the range that Ankit was talking about, it actually hit perfectly. And so sometimes it doesn't matter what the news is when something behaves the way it does. And this is referred to as sentiment when we talk about the equities. Sentiment change. It could be a lot about economics. It could be a lot about politics. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't seem to change its course. So it's kind of cool to actually see that this did confirm. Now, keep in mind, folks, that this was moving higher on the 11th. In fact, this is that last day right there. It was actually moving higher. But to see or identify the resistance, to see it could roll back over. And this was good economic data that this came into, and it kind of fizzled out. Doesn't mean that it can't change. Doesn't mean that in the next couple of days it might just consolidate and move higher. But if you take a look at this on the daily chart, it's at a bottom. And it is actually bouncing off of pretty major support level. So I would allow this to move a little higher. Maybe an anemic bounce, but if this starts to roll over again and it starts to push this level here, we could have a pretty decent currency, or I should say a weaker currency to pair things against. The New Zealand dollar is a little bit more obvious. It's already kind of there. In fact, folks, my trade for today is going to be the New Zealand dollar paired against the US dollar. Shocker, right? Of course. I just kind of like the pattern that it's set. Let's take a look at it on the volatility score. And it is right there. Let me shrink this out right there. Look at that. So it's rolling over. Very anemic move to the upside. I've got the New Zealand dollar at a -3, obviously. It's moving lower. Retest the 50. The RSI is moving lower. The SAR is down. If this can break this area, this is going to be a really fun trade to maybe pair against something like the US dollar for a move. So let's finish up with our cryptos. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. This is BTC. I got a +1 just because it's had a pretty good move, and it looks like it's kind of consolidating or barely pulling back. This is something that I'm glass half full with. I like the SAR still good. The RSI has come down, but it's above that 50 mark. A little bit of a hiccup here on the moving average, but folks, this moving average is going to move a lot. This is a very, very volatile currency, let alone all of them. So let's take a look at it on the daily. And you can see if I squeeze this down, yes, folks, I'm squeezing it down to a massive range, but it is in a range nonetheless. So we refer to this as a high base on the daily side. So if it can kind of consolidate and actually move higher, it's definitely a very strong place to be. So let's jump over to our next one. This is Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash on the velocity score looks like it wants to give up a little bit more. We have a pretty good support line at this area here. Once again, it's super volatile. We have an RSI that seems to be meandering below the 50. So there could be a little bit more weakness. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually kind of corrected and actually retested this area. But folks, you have to understand, for it to get all the way back up there would not take very long. It's a very aggressive move. So let's take a look at it on the daily chart, and this puts things a little bit more in perspective. It is definitely a pullback here on the RSI. Momentum is slowing, but look at that consolidation and bounce at the 50. So flip on the SARS, that's great. The moving average is flattening, but oh my, this thing looks like it's just gathering strength to actually turn and move higher. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Exact same thing on the daily. A little bit of a consolidation here. We'll pull back on the RSI above the 50, pull back on the SARS, still super high in the higher end. Let's take a look at volatility. Yeah, you can make with it what you can, folks. If you're trying to play these to the upside, that's great. Wait for the corrections. They come very hard and very fast. But if you're trying to play them the upside, make sure that you're taking profits when they come in, because of the fact that they move very hard and very fast here. So here's Litecoin, last one, consolidating here on the RSI, showing that there's still opportunity. There's no distinct weakness yet. Now, velocity is something different, but the RSI shows something a little bit different versus what I see here in the SARS as they flipped over. Kind of a U shape there. This could roll over a little bit, but once again, let's take a look at the daily. The daily looks like an extended move. It's pulling back, and it looks like it wants to move higher and retrace highs. So I guess what I'm trying to say, folks, I am the cryptos are very euphoric and very aggressive. To try to trade them on a 4-hour chart or smaller, I don't think you're going to make it. I truly don't. They're too volatile. I truly think the moves are too big. They might stop you out regardless if you're right in the direction or not. But if you take a look at these on the overall trend, you could probably take advantage of them as they confirm corrective action and or break out into new highs. Other than that, folks, there are some pairs out there that we can trade outside of cryptos. So this is basically where we're at right now with the velocity score. A couple things moved higher or lower. The US dollar just continues to strengthen. A little drop in the CAD there in the yen. The New Zealand dollar actually breaking down into lower lows on the velocity score. Euro getting weaker, pound. But take into consideration the overall. I'm just seeing moves from risk on to risk off. And what I'm just saying is the New Zealand dollar and the Aussie dollar have been actually getting weaker slowly for a while. And I'm seeing a little bit of emergence in the US dollar and the yen, although the US dollar is definitely the alpha here. So let's just take a look at a couple of trades that I see. And guess what, folks? It's just going to be the US dollar and the Kiwi and the US dollar and the Aussie. And that's all I'm looking at right now. So let's start with the Aussie US, right? Strongest, weakest. This is on the daily. It looks like it's kind of already moved below some levels. I just love where this RSI is, showing that it is out of favor. Let's take a look at the velocity score. And you can see it has actually yet to confirm into a new low. So if you guys are kind of anticipating, look, I could actually continue to take advantage of this once this flips. There it is. Good slope here. These need to flip, but boy, I like this moving average. Just be patient. Wait for this to confirm. You can always scale in as it breaks lower. One that might be a little quicker, obviously, is going to be the New Zealand dollar. It's a little bit lower. It's already kind of there. Here's the velocity score, or I should say the 4-hour chart. and it's kind of already there. So it's actually moving a little bit lower. The SAR is already flipped. This is what I expect in the Aussie US pairing, moving average and a falling relative strength index. So it's already kind of confirmed. If you wanted to add, to see if it extends, wait for it to retrace and buy some more, totally fine. Those are the two decent ones, and I expect these patterns to kind of continue for a little while. I mean, it's nothing new. You guys can see that this has actually been going this way for quite some time. So if it can continue a little bit lower, that's great. Take your, have your targets. Make sure that you pull profits when you want to, and go from there. So that's all I kind of got for today, folks. I like to take trades when they come, and when they present themselves. I'm not looking too much past that. I don't think I'm going to get anything in anticipation. Make sure that we do not project what we expect. Just follow along, right? So here's my conclusion, folks. The New Zealand dollar and the Aussie continue to weaken, and we've seen this for a while. US dollar continues to show strength. Yeah, sure, we got interest rate cuts, almost expected 100% next week, but for some reason, I think it's the stability of the dollar that has kept it going higher. Crypto remains the most volatile. It's awesome to trade. Just make sure that you're trading it quickly. You're in, you're out. You make sure that you don't put too much risk in it. Play relative strength and weakness, and just make sure, even if you want to play some of those cryptos and that stuff, proper position sizing. You can play almost anything you want. Just make sure you're aware of what you're risking to what you can gain. All right, folks. Thanks so much for joining me. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.